I want to start today by talking about something that I said Monday after the game, because sometimes you say something and you realize that it could be an overreaction and you need some time to cool down. But after a few days, I still feel the same way, and I want to get everyone's level of concern right now. Because what I said is that I feel like we've been duped by Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, and Joe Brady, specifically Beane and Brady this year. I tried giving them the benefit of the doubt because the Bills were winning and a lot of their numbers and analytics still look good. But we saw a lot of games like that Saints game. I remember saying, a win is a win, but there's a lot to work on here. So I could see through the weeds, and I knew that at some point it was going to catch up with them and they'd get exposed. So I want you to take a step back and ask yourself how realistic and sustainable it was/is for the Bills to be a Super Bowl team this year, for them to have Super Bowl aspirations when they funnel their offense through their running back, their tight end who can't stay healthy, and when he is healthy, he doesn't even play 50% of the snaps, and their slot receiver who they basically only use for tunnel screens. After that, it's Josh, go make something happen. So sure, they beat Kansas City a couple weeks ago, and that was a great win, but everything was clicking. When it's not clicking or it's not complimentary, when the Bills don't score first to dictate the game, when James Cook can't run for more than 100 yards, and then the Bills don't have a go-to receiver in a gotta-have-it moment, it snowballs in the opposite direction. Buffalo has no counterpunch. They just want to keep taking that right-handed jab at you. And sometimes in the NFL, actually a lot of times, you have to be able to play left-handed because now the book is out. You stop James Cook, you stop the Buffalo Bills. And unfortunately, it's too late in the season to find one based on how this team was constructed. That being said, I want to start by talking about Josh Allen because a lot of people have been saying this week that he needs to be better. And I would agree. He had 2 costly turnovers Sunday against the Dolphins, and he just hasn't been himself this season. And I think that he is definitely someone to blame for this. But I don't know how much blame I can put on him when his GM failed to build a proper offense around him, giving him one of, if not the worst wide receiver rooms in the league. Those wide receivers still cannot get open, leaving Allen scrambling around trying to make something happen off script. And then the script from his offensive coordinator is constantly throwing at or behind the line of scrimmage, no matter what the score is, as Joe Brady has a reluctance to push the ball down the field. So if I were to list the order of blame that I have for the Bills' offensive woes, I would say that number 1, it is Brandon Beane. Number 2, it is the wide receivers. Number 3, Joe Brady. And really, you could flip-flop those because I totally understand if you're under the impression that these wide receivers aren't that bad. Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel used to have way more yards and receptions with worse quarterbacks. So if you want to put Brady 2 and the wide receivers 3, that's fine with me. But then I have Josh Allen at number 4. Sean McDermott does bear some responsibility because he is the head coach who oversees everything, but I think he has more problems to worry about with his defense that is still giving up chunks of yards at a time and still can't tackle. I want to spend some time talking about Brandon Beane now because I think that the heat is on. So this is a perfect week to talk about and compare how Tampa Bay has continued to invest in their wide receiver position and Buffalo has divested. And keep in mind that Tampa Bay has had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, one of the best wide receiver duos of the past decade. But if we take a look at the last 3 seasons, so in 2023, Tampa drafted Trey Palmer with their 6th-round pick. It looked like he had some promise, but he was waived this past summer. Okay, so 2024, they draft Jaylen McMillan with their 3rd-round pick. And I'm thinking, okay, you already have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You spent a couple of draft picks on these wide receivers. I believe they signed Sterling Shepard in there. And then in 2025, this past season, they draft Emeka Egbuka with their 1st-round pick. And then they double dip by drafting Tez Johnson in the 7th round. And then you look at what Buffalo's done on the heels of trading away Stephon Diggs. 2023, they drafted Justin Shorter in the 5th round, not on the team anymore. 2024, they traded back for Keon Coleman, and to this point, it's looking like he could be a bust. 2025, with their 7th round pick, they drafted Caden Prather, who didn't even make it to the 3rd preseason game. So Tampa Bay has been very proactive and ahead of the curve because they said, we don't care that we already have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. This is a premium position and a premium asset that we're going to keep throwing darts every single season because you never know when you're going to hit a bullseye. And now you have someone like Emeka Egbuka for 4 years on a cheap contract that you don't have to pay someone else $25 to $30 million. And I don't want to hear that the Bills traded up for Dalton Kincaid in round 1 and he's basically a wide receiver because Tampa, even though that they have been investing in the wide receiver position, they were still able to draft Cade Otton, Rashad White, Payne Durham, Bucky Irving, and Devin Culp, all running backs and tight ends. Oh, and to add insult to injury, the combined cap hits of Dawson Knox and Curtis Samuel is just under $24 million. Mike Evans' cap hit is just above 25. And by the way, Knox and Samuel just combined for 24 targets after 9 games. So that's why I opened up this video by saying that I knew that the Bills were going to get exposed at some point because this is years worth of neglect at the wide receiver position. And now it's starting to catch up to Beane to the point where he was trying to trade for Jaylen Waddle at the deadline. We did learn that because a report from Tom Pelissero on Sunday said that the Bills offered a 27 first-round pick and a 26 third-round pick for Jaylen Waddle. And the Dolphins said, we want the first-round pick to be in 26. Beane said we're going to have to pass. So he went from doing nothing to trying to do everything at the deadline. And I don't know if that was leaked to try to make him look better, because it only makes him look worse now. Because now it's basically saying, hey, I tried, but I failed to do my job. And now there is nothing to do because the deadline has passed. And before I move on, I just want to say that the other report said that he was also trying to get Quinnen Williams from the Jets. And you're already going to be behind the 8 ball when you're trying to trade within the division, because why would the teams that have been looking up at you for the past half decade want to help you get better? I know that you say, well, we're going to give you this draft capital and you're trying to build for the future anyways, but your first round pick is probably going to be in the late 20s, early 30s anyways. So now we're on to plan C. The Bills signed wide receiver Mecole Hardman on Monday and defensive end Morgan Fox on Wednesday. So the way I see it is that plan A was a flop. You were unable to get Jaylen Waddle or Quinnen Williams. You did nothing with plan B, and I'm talking about guys like Rashid Shaheed and Draymond Jones. Shaheed, if you've been following along, you know I was a big Shaheed guy. He went to the Seahawks for a 4th and a 6th. Jones went to the Ravens for a conditional 5th. I was looking at the Titans to sell other defensive line pieces. Sebastian Joseph Day never got traded, but I thought he was up for a trade. Same thing with Jihad Ward, a nice edge rusher. So Beane did nothing to get B-level players, and now we're signing street free agents with Mecole Hardman and Morgan Fox. So let's take a look at these guys and see if they will actually help this roster. All right, so here are the stats for Mecole Hardman as the Chiefs drafted him in the 2nd round out of Georgia in 2019. And in 6 years in the league between the Chiefs and the Jets, he has played 80 games, only starting 28 of them. And he has 178 receptions for 2,300 yards and 16 touchdowns. And he hasn't surpassed 300 yards since 21. And that was probably his best season, as you can see I'm highlighting here. So 17 games, 8 starts, 59 receptions, 693 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And as you can see over here on the right-hand side, he has some rushing abilities as well. So get ready for those Joe Brady jet sweeps and end arounds. And then as we scroll down here and check on his return stats, so 2019 was his best season as he was named 2nd team All-Pro as well as a Pro Bowler. He returned 1 kickoff for a touchdown, which is the only one in his career. You can see his numbers as he followed that up the next couple of seasons, 2020, 2021. He did have a dip in 22 and 23. And then as we look at his stats from last year with Kansas City, 20 punt returns for 203 yards for a 10.3 average. And then he averaged 26.4 yards per kick return. So I think he's going to help in some capacity, but honestly, I just see Mecole Hardman being another version of Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel, but I could be wrong. And as we take a look at Morgan Fox now, I think this could be a very underrated signing because I think that the 31-year-old can come in and play that Michael Hoyt role because over his 8-year career, he has lined up all over the defensive line, as you can see from these advanced stats from PFF. So in those 8 years, Fox has 1,185 snaps from the BGP tab right there. And basically what that means is that's the number of snaps lined up on the defensive line as a defensive tackle. And then for the OVT there, that is the number of snaps lined up over an offensive tackle, so essentially being the edge rusher. And that's where he has his most snaps, 1,431. So getting to know Morgan Fox a little more, he spent his first 4 seasons with the Los Angeles Rams, 1 season with the Panthers, and then the last 3 were with the Chargers. So he fits right in from that standpoint, as the Bills, they seem to go for not only former Panthers, but former Rams and Chargers as well. But in those 8 years, he has 27 career sacks in 120 games, but he's only started 34 of them. So I think he will fit in not only from a Michael Hoyt perspective, but from a Buffalo perspective, because we know how they like to rotate their defensive linemen. And the best part is he has played in all 16 or 17 games since his rookie season in 2016. I don't want to jinx him because we know how bad the injury luck is for the Bills, specifically on that defensive line, but I'd like to think that he is pretty durable. So that being said, where are you at right now? What is your level of concern or confidence with the 2025 Buffalo Bills? I'll just give you my take, and that is I think that this team can get hot. I think they can go on one of their classic late season runs. I think that Hardman and Fox will help to a point, but in the end, I don't think it's going to be enough. I just see way too many holes, especially when you compound them with the injuries that the Bills have been sustaining. There are just too many weaknesses on this roster to make a late season run for the Super Bowl. I really hope that I'm wrong. I would love more than anything to be wrong, but I just don't see it happening this year. So I want to hear what you have to say. Make sure you smash that like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I had an interview with Dwayne Carter this past week, talked to him about the trade deadline and what a NFL player's mindset is when you hear all those rumors. So make sure you check that out as well. And I will have more analysis, takeaways, breakdowns, and player interviews coming up right here on my YouTube channel. Go Bills!